Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Morgan Hopkins. I am the Communications Director with the House Democratic Caucus in Virginia. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to start with our brief run of show, where we're going to start with, me. So good morning. And then we're going to have our Virginia representative speak. So we're going to have House Democratic Caucus Chair Charnel Herring speak. Then we're going to have Virginia State Caucus Chair Mamie Locke speak. Then from there, we're going to go to Pennsylvania, where we'll have Caucus Administrator Leanne Kruger going, and closing out with Arizona Senator Eva Birch, the Democratic Minority Whip. And then after that, we'll have some time for some questions, and then we'll close out. So to start with a brief intro, 1 year ago today, well, Saturday, the United States Supreme Court reversed 50 years of precedent, overturning Roe v. Wade. And this Dobbs decision was the culmination of decades-long nationwide campaign to restrict reproductive freedoms by mainstream Republican politicians. After Dobbs, Republican-held state legislatures and Republican governors took action, working overnight to draft or reinstate abortion bans and leaving millions and millions of Americans without the right to choose under the cover of darkness. Let's be clear. State legislatures are the last line of defense for abortion rights. And when Democratic majorities hold in state legislatures, millions of Americans can rest easy, knowing that their fundamental rights and freedoms aren't under attack. So upcoming elections in these three states of Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Virginia this year are critical in the battle against extremism. In the last year, voters showed up everywhere in states all around the country, supporting candidates who believe in choice. Make no mistake, right? The rights of millions of Americans will not be taken away. We will continue to show up. We'll continue to fight back. Voters have not forgotten that Republican leaders in the Supreme Court, to state legislatures, and in Congress are responsible for millions of Americans losing the fundamental right to abortion. Now more than ever, it's vital that we elect candidates that are ready to not only defend, but fight back against Republican extremism. And then we want to defend the right for an abortion in our state legislatures across the country. So that is why we've joined together today to support pro-choice candidates in key states where legal abortion hinges on the majorities of Democrats. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, Virginia House Democratic Caucus Chair, Charnel Herring.
Thank you so much, Morgan, and thank you everybody who's joined us today. We've seen what has happened over the past year since the Dobbs decision. Republican state legislatures across the country have passed dangerous new abortion bans that will make it harder for women to get the care they need. And that's why we're excited to partner with our colleagues in Arizona and Pennsylvania, where abortion rights are also on the line in the upcoming elections, to build momentum for Democratic wins at the state level that will help ensure we protect access to reproductive care for millions of people. With North and South Carolina's proposed abortion bans, Virginia is now the only state in the South that has not passed new restrictions on abortion following the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision. North and South Carolina are only the most recent examples of the 14 states in the nation that have outright bans on abortion. Abortion is on the ballot this November in the Commonwealth, make no mistake. Virginia is the #1 battleground state this year when it comes to protecting abortion rights. In 2020, I had the honor of championing the legislation that repealed the harmful abortion restrictions imposed by Republicans in our state. I've fought my entire career in the Virginia General Assembly to protect a woman's right to choose for reproductive freedom, and I will not stop until reproductive health care is protected by our state's constitution. We have seen what Republicans have done in the past to restrict abortion access in Virginia. They've passed legislation mandating invasive transvaginal ultrasounds, instituted waiting periods that are not evidence-based, that make it harder for women to get the care that they need. And they have repeatedly tried to pass legislation to ban abortion in every legislative session over the past several years. It is already challenging for some Virginians to access care because of how far they live from a provider. With the influx of patients from neighboring states, it will be even more difficult for women to get the health care they need. The only way to stop the GOP's agenda from becoming law and to help us to protect the fundamental rights of all Virginia families is to continue to elect Democrats committed to taking up this fight and take back the House this November. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my counterpart in the Senate, Senate Caucus Chair, Mamie Lott.
Guess I need to unmute myself first. Thank you, Delegate Herring. The Supreme Court has left abortion rights up to the states to defend. And we know that anti-abortion extremists in Virginia, like Governor Youngkin, will stop at nothing until they've passed new restrictions on our reproductive freedom. During his campaign for governor, Glenn Youngkin promised that he would take action to ban abortion, and this past year, we saw Republicans in the Virginia General Assembly try to pass various bills restricting abortion access. Democrats in the General Assembly are the only people standing between Virginians and an abortion ban similar to the ones we've seen across the country. Like North Carolina was, Virginia is one election away from banning access to abortion, and that election is this November. Republicans have not been shy about their plans to end Virginia's freedom to make their own healthcare decisions. Republican candidates for the State House and Senate have promised to completely defund Planned Parenthood and ban abortions with no exceptions to protect the health of the mother or for victims of rape and incest. And as a victim of incest myself, I see that as appalling. They've cheered on the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision and supported their counterparts in other states who passed extreme abortion bans that have put lives in danger. The fundamental freedom to make your own health care decisions is at stake in this year's elections. Republican politicians in Virginia want to meddle in some of the most intimate and difficult decisions people have to make. They want to pass new laws that tell doctors how to do their jobs and force their patients to make difficult choices. Virginia is the #1 battleground state this year when it comes to protecting abortion rights. All 140 seats in the General Assembly are up for re-election this year. And Republicans only need to flip a few Senate seats to get a legislative trifecta that will give them the power to enact extreme abortion bans. The only way to stop the GOP's agenda from becoming law is to help us protect and expand our Democratic majority in the Senate and flip the House. We've also seen the consequences of these extreme abortion bans in other states. Women have been forced to give birth even when it puts their lives at risk or other pregnancies are non-viable. Over the past year, we've seen horrific stories from across the country of the dangerous and deadly consequences of these draconian abortion bans. We can't let the same happen here in Virginia. Abortion bans pose a real threat to the health and well-being of women across our Commonwealth and across the country. Maternal mortality is significantly higher in states with abortion bans. Democrats have made tremendous progress recently expanding access to health care. A ban on abortion would take us backwards, and we refuse to go backwards. That's why we're excited to partner with our colleagues in Arizona and Pennsylvania, where abortion rights are also on the line in upcoming elections, to build momentum to Democratic wins at the state level that will help ensure we protect access to reproductive health care for millions of people. Thank you, Madam Chair. Now we'll hear from Pennsylvania Chair Administrator and former HCC Chair, Leanne Kruger.
Good morning, everybody. Here in Pennsylvania last year, literally within weeks of the release of the Dobbs decision, we witnessed Republican legislators using their then majority to attempt to force through an amendment to the state constitution that would ban abortion. And they voted literally in the middle of the night. Now, Pennsylvania Republicans knew at the time that the only way to go around the Democratic governor's veto pen, then Governor Wolf had vetoed other abortion bans that they passed, was through a constitutional amendment, because here in Pennsylvania, the governor cannot veto a constitutional amendment. Later last year, we saw an overwhelming number of voters turn out to defend the right to reproductive access here in Pennsylvania, where we were able to elect a 1-seat Democratic majority that is committed to defending choice and to expanding access to reproductive health care. Now, since November, we've had to defend that majority in 4 special elections, and every single time voters have turned out to protect our 1-seat Democratic House majority, and they wanted to stop anti-choice Republicans from regaining control of the House. Our voters here in Pennsylvania know that state legislative majorities matter. Who controls what bills run matter. Who controls what comes out of the health committee matters. And since Democrats have taken control of the state house, we've been able to deliver. Our pro-reproductive rights House Democratic majority has been able to pass legislation that has a critical impact of folks across the Commonwealth. Right now, I'm working on a bill, House Bill 1140, which would expand and protect birth control access in Pennsylvania. And a bill like this never had a chance under the previous Republican majority. And my colleagues and I have a whole package of bills we're working on to expand reproductive rights. So as we look to 2024, we know that protecting and expanding our Democratic majority here in the State House is the only way to protect access to reproductive health care in Pennsylvania. And we're committed to fighting as hard as we need to make sure that people's rights are not rolled back here in Pennsylvania. It's my pleasure to join this call. And now I'm going to turn it over to Arizona Senator Eva Birch, who serves as the Democratic Minority Whip.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Eva Birch, and I am the Minority Whip in the Arizona Senate. But at least equally importantly, I'm also a nurse practitioner and I specialize in women's health. So I'm just really proud to be able to bring that voice of expertise to the Arizona legislature, where we very often have misinformation or disinformation making their way onto the Senate floor. But I'm so honored to be with fellow Democratic women from across the country who are committed to fighting for abortion rights in their home states. Right now in Arizona, we have a 15-week abortion ban on the books, and that was thanks to law that was passed and signed by the Arizona GOP just last session. And that's relatively recent. We had a ban that was closer to 20 weeks previous to that. We also have legislation in place that creates unnecessary barriers to abortion access, like many other states, including waiting times, ultrasound requirements, and providers have to read a list of misleading and often inaccurate information to patients before they can have a procedure. Just this session, we've had multiple attempts to advance an anti-abortion agenda, many pieces of legislation, including bills that would codify fetal personhood into law, and one bill that would even put women in jail for receiving what could very well be life-saving health care, like an abortion. But when I was running for office last year, the issue became very personal to me. My husband and I had been trying for quite some time to get pregnant, and we did during the campaign trail, which any elected official will tell you might not be the best time to get pregnant, but that's when it happened for us. But we had been tracking my fertility and working at it for quite some time. I was 42 years old, so we knew that I was high risk and that we had a little bit of an uphill battle. But we did get pregnant. But as we continued to have ultrasounds, my pregnancy was not progressing the way that it should. And ultimately, we were told that my pregnancy was going to fail, that the embryo was dying, the heart rate was much too low, and that my pregnancy would end in a miscarriage. An option that I was not given was abortion. I was told to keep coming back to the clinic until the embryo had died, and that then I could have a procedure. But lucky for me, I was able to advocate for myself because I am a healthcare provider and because I had that knowledge already. I knew that having an abortion is safer than being pregnant. An abortion is safer than any stage of pregnancy. Pregnancy is not a health neutral event. It carries its own risks. And I did not want to continue to be pregnant with a pregnancy that wasn't viable. And so we scheduled an abortion. It's not what I wanted to happen. That was a pregnancy that I wanted very much. And it's very heartbreaking and infuriating to know that that there are people out there who won't be able to have that same choice that I had. Just weeks after my abortion, Roe fell and abortion services were completely suspended in Arizona. So that option would no longer have been available to me. In situations like mine, even if I could have afforded it, travel to obtain an abortion would not have been the best option for me. It wouldn't have been an appropriate option or a realistic option for me. Because of the uncertainty of the law that was in place in Arizona, it took some time for the services to be reinstated because providers were afraid of breaking the law when there wasn't that clarity. So there hasn't really been a more critical time for families across the country. And I know that here in Arizona, we are closer than ever to restoring that right to choose. Both the House and the Senate are in a 1-seat minority right now in both chambers. So just flipping 2 seats in the House or 2 seats in the Senate could fundamentally change the outlook for millions of Arizonans' reproductive rights and freedoms. And a 1-seat win would secure us a tie to at least continue to hold the line. But of course, we are hopeful and optimistic to flip both of these chambers. But thank you so much to my fellow elected officials for your commitment to families across the country. It means so much to me, to my patients, and to myself, and I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you, Senator Burge, and thank you to all of our speakers. I am now going to open up the floor to questions. Please use the raise hand function to ask a question, and then please limit it to 1 question at a time in the interest of time. When called on, can you please unmute, state your name, outlet, and state. And once your question has concluded, please go back on mute. So anyone has questions, please feel free. Well, I will ask a question to kick us off. So I would love to hear about what ties your states together specifically. So anyone can jump in and answer if you would like to. Yes.
It's Charnel. I will take that. It's when we just heard from Arizona, it's sort of with Virginia as well, where when the Senate chambers is a narrow majority for reproductive freedom. We are in the minority in the House. Our elections are this year, and I think the other legislatures they're the same. We're in a situation where it's an election cycle that will determine whether we have reproductive freedom protected in our states. And so that's what ties us together. And I will also say that it's tying not just our states, but I think most of the states in this country together, this issue. There was just recently a White House convening. I was there talking about this issue. And there's a lot of similarities going on and things that Virginia's experienced that other states are experiencing now. So I think it's that there was just 1 election cycle away from determining whether reproductive freedom is protected.
Thank you, Chair Herring. We have a question from Stephanie Akin.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for doing this. I have a Virginia question. Looking forward to 2023, I'm hearing from some Republicans in the state that they're consolidating around a 15-week limit and calling that a common sense measure that reflects what the majority of voters want. And I just was wondering if you had a specific response to that, to 15 weeks.
Senator Locke, do you want to take that one?
Sure. A ban is a ban, irrespective of how many weeks they may put on any kind of a ban. And it is still limiting the access that a person may have to their reproductive freedom. And they can call it whatever they want to call it. They are still interfering in the choices that a person may have to their reproductive rights and their reproductive freedom. So they can coalesce on whatever they want to coalesce around, or whatever time frame they may want to put on those choices. They are still interfering in a woman's right to choose, a person's right to choose in terms of their reproductive health and their reproductive freedom. It is still going to be met with resistance on the part of Democrats, and we are going to oppose whatever they put out there in terms of a ban.
Chair Herring, did you also want to respond?
Sure. I'd be happy to. If you look at the states that have the 15-week ban, women's lives have been put at risk. There was a report in one state where a woman, I believe it was Florida, had to carry a dead fetus for a period. It's not, again, this is not evidence-based. Not every pregnancy is the same. Not every individual is the same. Individuals have underlying conditions, but we are hearing reports of that, of people being forced to carry non-viable fetuses, and then that, will cause sepsis to set in. And so that's why a ban, and what's in the center of law is exactly right. A ban is a ban. It's dangerous, and decisions about what to do next should be left with the doctor, the physician, the individual carrying the fetus and their family, and that privacy right needs to be protected. Thank you.
Thank you for those answers and for your question. Administrator Kruger, I would love to ask you, what does it mean to be in a battleground state in the era of Roe v. Wade being overturned?
Well, I've been in the legislature for almost 8 years, and every year before we flipped the House, we would fight abortion bans on the floor. And thanks to the governor's veto, we have been able to stop those from becoming law in Pennsylvania. But every session, over and over and over again, we would face a fight. Whether it was a bill to ban abortion at a certain period of time, or to mandate burial in the case of someone having a miscarriage, which we fought on the floor twice in a row. These bills are harmful to women. They create fear, they create misinformation. And if we had not flipped the House in November, a constitutional abortion ban would have been one of the very, very first things the Republicans ran. And so by one seat, won by just a couple hundred votes, we were able to stop that. But our majority is precarious. Just like we're seeing slim margins in Virginia and Arizona. And so, how folks vote on this issue matters, and literally just a couple hundred votes can make the difference to whether people have access or lose access.
Thank you for that. Stephanie, do you have another question?
Sorry, I'm a little slow with the Zoom functions here. Another Virginia question, looking at 2023 elections in Virginia, the state's often seen as a watershed, and it's one of the only purple states that really didn't get a chance to vote after the Dobbs decision. So I'm just curious how you're seeing this election as a measure of how voters are seeing, given all that has happened with abortion rights in the past year.
Well, that's not completely accurate. We had a special election in January in Virginia Beach with Senator Rouse's election. And during that special election, one of the top issues that he saw on the ground, and I also canvassed for him, was actually abortion rights, where on the doors, individuals were actually saying that this was one of the top issues for them, was the fact that they did not want their rights taken away from them by a Republican legislature. And that was a watermark issue during that special election. So, and he himself said that as he went around during that special, even though it was a short time frame, just December
you
to
see any
January, just December to January, a few short weeks, that was the top issue during that short time frame for that special election. So it is a watermark issue and a key issue as we went through that special election. And it remains a fundamental freedom. This is the first time that a right has been taken away that's been a right for 50 years. So, and I believe that individuals out there are still very, very concerned about the fact that you have a right taken away. And so, again, that one's reproductive rights, a woman's right to choose, a privacy right has been taken away. It remains key and critical as we move around the state on the campaign trail.
Thank you. And Chair Herring, did you want to offer any insight on that too?
No, I think the senator's spot on in that way. I was thinking it was that election or this issue as with our post-Dobbs election that happened, and the senator prevailed. Thank you.
Could I follow up just really briefly? Senator, you mentioned what people were saying at the door during that special election. Any information that you're getting from voters now as you're canvassing in 2023, anything that you can share that you're hearing looking forward to that election?
This remains very critical and very key. As we, again, knocking on doors, in addition to, of course, the economy and gun violence remains very critical and key. But reproductive rights, a woman's right to choose remains right up there at the top as one of the marquee issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'm going to pose our last question to Senator Birch. Is this going to remain kind of along Stephanie's last question, but is this also going to remain a top issue for voters in your state heading into your next elections?
Yes, thank you for that question. So unlike Virginia, we do not have elections this fall. Our elections are going to be again next year. But I am pretty certain that this issue is not going to lose its momentum. I mean, this is a fundamental freedom that Americans have been able to rely on for over 50 years. And when you lose something like that overnight, voters are not going to forget that. And, you know, in my district, for example, we have more registered Republicans than Democrats in my district. And this was a key issue and probably my most important issue. And we won by several thousand votes in my district. And I think that that really speaks to the importance in the minds of the voters. We had several issues that are really important. Our housing crisis, affordable housing is really important. Water is really important. But absolutely reproductive rights and reproductive health care remains a top priority for voters in our state. We certainly have extensive polling that shows that I mean, these abortion bans are not popular, even in a state like Arizona that has historically been a more conservative state, as we continue to trend towards being a purple state. And as we continue to gain ground in Arizona, this abortion issue is a high priority. Our voters understand that when these rights are stripped and that when we have these extremist politicians who have this very black and white thinking, this all or nothing thinking, our voters understand that that's not realistic, that that's not safe, that that's not what is in their own best interest or the interest of their loved ones, and that we are the ones who are going to hold ground and fight for them to make sure that these really restrictive draconian bans don't end up in our Arizona law. So I think that that's going to continue to be important. And again, I can't overemphasize the importance of our team on the ground, of knocking on those doors, of making those phone calls, of engaging with voters so that they understand that we're on their side and that we're going to continue to be moving forward.
Thank you so much. And then thank you to all of our speakers and to everyone who joined us today. We greatly appreciate it. Please, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me or to any of your state comms people. I'm happy to answer any questions and direct them as they need to be. Please look out for additional communications from us, through the weekend and ahead of this important anniversary. So with that, thank you to everyone and have a good rest of your day.